thing whenever I come up to a mic that I start with, hello everyone, because my mom was a teacher and I learned a teacher voice when I was like about that high. And just like a teacher, I always start with visual aids. So visual aid number 1, this is my tattoo, everyone. Ooh, pretty shiny. It is Latin because I am also pretentious. And it means omnia possibilia, which means anything is possible. This actually has a real reason behind it. On June 16th, 2010, I went to work as normal. I went to lunch as normal. I went to the bathroom as normal and then passed out in the bathroom not quite as normal. And that felt really weird, and I thought, okay, so maybe I'm getting sick, and I made it home and I was in pain, and the pain started getting worse, and then the pain started getting worse, and then the pain started getting worse, and then I started throwing up blood, and hey, that's really not good. And I make my way to the hospital, like you do when you're throwing up blood, and I got into the emergency room, and I coded. My blood pressure dropped to about 40/20. I was paralyzed, I was blind, I could hear everything, which is just the most horrible thing you can think of. And it turned out that I was hemorrhaging internally. I had half of my intestine was necrotic. They rushed me into surgery at 10:10 p.m., which I got commemorated right here. Spoiler alert, turns out I'm okay. Just gonna put it out there. I survived. That's not the end of the story. But it was this thing that, as you can probably imagine, it really was so serious that I had to start quite literally from scratch. I had to start all the way back with learning how to breathe again. And then after I learned how to breathe again, I had to learn how to walk again. And after I learned how to walk again, I had to learn how to eat again. And it was just like this one plodding step after another, where it's like, okay, I'm going to get my health back. Okay, it's now 4 years later. I think I can start working again. Okay, great, I can start working again. Oh my God, I can earn money again. Oh, that means I can get a car again. Oh my gosh, I've gotten a car, I have money. I can move out of my parents' house again, which at 35 was like, thank God. And then, it's like, and I'm getting ready to move out of my parents' house, and then I get this job at a Fortune 500 company, and it was just like, oh my gosh, and my mom starts calling me Amazing Amanda, because she likes alliteration. And I was so like, oh my gosh, I've got to keep this up. I've rebuilt myself, I've rebuilt my life, I'm working for a Fortune 500 company, I've got to give it everything. And that's the problem with working for a Fortune 500 company, is that they take everything from you. I was working 24 hours a day. I am answering emails to Austria at 2 in the morning. I'm talking to Australians at 9 p.m. at night. I'm like losing my mind. I start to really slip backwards because I'm working so much. I'm not seeing anyone. I live by myself. I have one really fat cat that shits on the floor occasionally. Like, this is all I have. So what else are you gonna do in that situation but drink, like a normal person. So I started getting into this really terrible cycle where it's like, if I'm not working, I'm drinking. If I'm not drunk, I'm hungover. And you just kind of repeat. And it finally gets to the beginning of 2018, and I'm like, I got to do something different than this. Like, I didn't come back from the dead to just kill myself slowly again. Like, that doesn't even make sense. So I'm looking at my tattoo, and I was like, I did ink this on me for a reason, to always remember that anything is possible. And I'm looking at my phone, and I realize that where anything is possible? On Meetup. Meetup has everything. You can do whatever you want on Meetup. And so I start scrolling through, and I was like, you can do whatever. Okay, well, I don't want to do that much. Okay, I don't want to do that. Okay, I don't want to do that either. Until I finally come to game nights. I was like, great, I can do game nights, and but the problem is like, as I'm scrolling through, like, everything is like, Dungeons and Dragons, play Settlers of Catan, it's all games I hate, so it's not even, and then finally I'm scrolling through, and I was like, wait a minute, this is an interesting one, this is a good one. It was game night in a sex dungeon. And yeah, that was exactly my reaction, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to tell everyone at work that I'm leaving early. I'm going to drive from Santa Monica to the back-ass end of the valley and take 2.5 hours driving there because that's where a sex dungeon is, and I'm going to game night in a sex dungeon. And it really was a 2.5 hour drive. I will never forget that. And like the whole time I'm like playing like Eye of the Tiger and shit. Like I am like, this is like my moment triumphant. And like, and I park and I get out of the car and I'm like, yes! I am in a dirty back alley in a warehouse district in front of a windowless warehouse district in front of a door with a T. And a doorbell that says, ring, but only if you really want to come in. And I realized, you know, I stayed sober for 3 days for this. And I get there and I didn't make any plans beyond this part. I was just, you know, life's gonna change because I went to game night in a sex dungeon. Everything's going to be better because I went to sex night, I went to game night in a sex dungeon. I'm gonna meet people, it's gonna be fantastic. And I'm just standing at the door being like, well, okay. And I ring the doorbell and they let me in and I go up to the front desk and I say, hi, I'm here for the game night in the sex dungeon. And he responds with, yes, dear. I'm gonna guess this is your first time. How about I get a member to show you around first? And I say, cool, because I didn't know what to do next anyway. And so he calls over this guy that is a member. And this member's name, because nobody uses their real names, his name is Enigma. And I just want to point out, this is definitely the name you give, and it's the coolest name you can give to an overweight 29-year-old with a greasy ponytail and a clown t-shirt on that's throwing up blood. Definitely the person for me. And he says, hi, I'm Enigma. And I say, hi, I'm not. I didn't even know what to call myself. I think I called myself Angel because reasons. And so he's like, well, you know, he's like, you can't just stand out here. You got to go through into the main room. And the main room is behind this big, tall, black door. And I was like, well, I got through one door. I guess I can go through another into the main room. So I was like, okay, lead the way to the main room. And I don't know what I'm gonna see. All I know is like game night sex dungeons. Like the only two things I looked at, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna see some like Eyes Wide Shut, Amsterdam, Red Light District, very German something like going on. And I go in and I'm like, okay. And it's a whole bunch of nerds in leather and chains and ball gags, and they're eating Cheetos and playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, I hate that game. Crap, like I drove 2.5 hours for this game night that's supposed to change my life just because it's in a sex dungeon and they're playing the game I don't even like. And so this guy says to me, yeah, you want to play a game? And I'm like, no, I don't know these games. I don't know these people. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just keep, showing you around. So just so you know, there's our cage. You can hang from there or have someone tie you. There's a St. Andrew's cross over here. People really like to get tied up on that one. Oh, there's hobby horses where people also get tied up. Oh, and then a whole bunch of rooms in the back where people, oh, by the way, did I mention, get tied up? And okay, is that a game you guys play? Well, not tonight. And I finally, I'm just honest with them. I just said, you know what? This is really cool. And it was, I felt strangely comfortable there, which is not something I was expecting at all. I was like, this is really cool, except you're all playing games I hate. I don't know how to meet anyone. And he says, it's fine. Why don't we just go talk? And so, like, cut to a black leather couch, of course, a little while later, and he leans over and he's like, I'm a photographer. I do bondage photography. And I'm like, if you ever would like to be the subject of some bondage photography. And I just, in that moment, I go, I'm just sitting there, like, because my mother taught me to be very polite and you're not allowed to, like, interrupt someone. So I'm like, And all I can think is, I have made a very grave error. I don't know why I thought this was going to change my life. I don't know why I am doing this. It has been 3 days since I've had a drink. It's been 3 days since I've had 3 bottles of wine. I am going to go home, and we are going to forget that this entire episode ever happened. Except he's still fucking talking. And remember, my mother taught me never to be impolite. So I'm waiting and waiting for it, like, just there to be a pause to be like, oh, sorry, cat's on fire, gotta go. Like, some ambiguous emergency. And he finally pauses to take a breath. And I'm about to do my thing when all of a sudden I hear this really loud, booming voice say, hey, you want to play some tabletop Doctor Who? And I turn, and there's this tall, really good-looking, blonde dude sitting cross-legged in a throne, wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Because the night wasn't weird enough yet. Just want to, so you know. And I said the smartest thing I ever said in my life, which was, huh? And he said, do you want to play some tabletop Doctor Who? And I said, how? All I know about Doctor Who is that there's this thing called a TARDIS. And he said, you know what? That's fine. I can teach you the rest. And I take a minute and I'm like, okay, so contestant number 1 is bondage photographer. Contestant number 2 is blonde, attractive fellow in a throne. And option number 3 is 3 bottles of wine. Well, 3 bottles of wine, let's face it, is probably going to happen regardless. So, fuck it, let's do it. I came here to have, game night in a sex dungeon. I'm going to play a goddamn game in a sex dungeon. So I say to him, yes. Yes, I will play tabletop Doctor Who. I have no idea what I'm doing. And he said, it's totally fine. You're a time lady and you've just landed on a theme park planet with your companion. The mascots are throwing up arsenic, and go. And I took in all of this information and went, I don't think those mascots should be throwing up arsenic, and went from there. And then this, like, really crazy thing started to happen where I started to relax. And I started to laugh. And I started to be myself, and I like really hit it off with this guy whose name I didn't even know as he's playing this game, and like everything, at that point everything was just so surreal that it made more sense to be like, that's right, I'm gonna solve why characters are throwing up arsenic on a game planet. That makes more sense to me right now. And we get through the whole game, and I realized at the end of it, I'm happy. And I've been enjoying myself. And this is something I haven't felt in the longest time. And it was kind of what I wanted. So of course, I have to know who this guy is that like completely changed my night around. And so I said to him, after I learned his name, which is Casey Jones. Everyone gets one, okay. So I said, what's the strangest thing that's ever happened to you? And he gets a big shit-eating grin on his face, and he goes, well, I've died before. And I laughed. And I said, no shit. You see this tattoo? You see this time? I've died before. And he looks back at me and he goes, well, no shit. You want to go on a date? And I said, you know what? I do. I really do. And, it's been about 1.5 years since that night. And, I originally got this tattoo to always remind me that the best things can come out of the absolute worst circumstances, especially when you can move beyond something so final as death and fear. And we talk about that night a lot, and we've been together for pretty much every night since that first night, and we've built this string of beautiful best moments dealing with some of the worst circumstances of our past, and yeah, we totally still play Doctor Who. Thank you.